Conor McGregor just issued an Instagram post that recounted the entire fight and gave his round-by-round thoughts on his performance and on what took place that night. Nothing on the post-fight altercation, but on the fight itself. And I think it's always amazing how fighters, when they get to the top and they get beaten by, the best, that they are able to mentally convince themselves that they could still climb that mountain and they could eventually become the champion, be the best. No matter what took place in the ring, they're able to psychologically get themselves back on track to train as if they're the greatest in the world. I've always found that amazing. I mean, I've seen so many boxers get knocked off as they're climbing, but then they somehow tell themselves that it's worth continuing to fight and continuing to pursue the absolute top of the sport. But towards the end of the post, he said, I don't need an immediate rematch. If an immediate rematch isn't meant to be, then I'm willing to fight the next in line. Bring it on. Now, I hope behind closed doors, he's not making a power play with Dana and with the league that demands his immediate rematch, which he does have the power to do. If Conor wants to rematch with Khabib bad enough, that's what he'll get. That's what I think he'll get. I would be really surprised if the UFC actually made an integrity-based move and said, well, no, we have a #1 contender, Tony Ferguson, who deserves a shot. I would love to see them do that more often and actually go with the rankings to determine what the next fights are, as opposed to stripping interim title holders of their belt so they could keep the belt moving in the division if somebody gets injured. I just see them make so many moves that are against the integrity of the sport if the actual rankings are to mean a damn thing. So taking what Conor's saying at face value and taking him at his word that he's willing to fight the next in line, let's think about what the best matchups for him would be. I'd love to see him fight the winner of Kevin Lee and Al Iaquinta. I think that would be a really nice matchup. He has the potential to beat either one of them, but I think that they have the potential to also be very competitive with him as well. I would love to see him fight Tony Ferguson. In fact, if I could put any match together and want to see that fight happen, Conor McGregor versus Tony Ferguson is at the absolute top of that list. I've been wanting to see that fight for a while. I've wanted to see Tony Ferguson fight Khabib, and I really want to see Tony Ferguson fight Conor. I personally think that Ferguson is the best in the division, even if Khabib is outstanding. Conor's amazing. Ferguson is just another animal, and I think that he's had some hard luck as of late, either with Khabib pulling out of their fight or with him having to pull out of their last fight with an injury. I just love to see Tony Ferguson fight anybody. So who else for Conor? Winner of Lee Iaquinta, winner of Khabib Ferguson, Conor versus Showtime Pettis. Maybe if we could rewind the clock and have Showtime back when he was dominating Benson Henderson and when he was champ, or around the time he destroyed Donald Cerrone, before Cerrone started to decline, Showtime took it to him. Showtime just showed that there are levels to this in terms of striking, and Showtime's got outstanding jiu-jitsu. That's actually his calling card. It just so happens he's an outstanding athlete and an amazing striker. So yeah, if we could get Showtime 3, 4, 5 years ago, I'd love to see Showtime versus Conor. I don't know if he could handle Conor now, but I mean, you would still have to give him the edge with the ground game. But hell, I'd even be down to see Conor versus this reduced version of Showtime. I mean, because Showtime's still a good fighter, and I'm still not 100% convinced that Conor is totally in it to win it, and that he could get back to the level that he was when he knocked out Aldo, even though that was at 145, or when he dominated Eddie Alvarez after the 2 fights with Nate Diaz. I just think that it was a long layoff for Conor, and it might take him some time to get back, if he could ever totally get back to where he was. He's now about 30 years old, so we'll see. But right now, in a rematch between Conor and Khabib, I still have to slightly lean Khabib in the rematch, and I'd still lean Ferguson over Conor were they to fight. I would favor Conor over Kevin Lee, although I think that Kevin Lee's wrestling makes it interesting. I think that Conor's a sharper striker than Lee, and I think that he would get a good win in on him. We saw Ferguson outlast and submit Kevin Lee, but Kevin Lee was battling staph infection leading into that fight, so I don't know. There are a lot of variables there. Eddie Alvarez just left for another promotion, so we're not going to see Conor versus Eddie Alvarez, nor do I think we really need to. I think we saw what happened when they got in the cage together, or at least on that day. Conor versus Nate Diaz, 3. Sure, why the hell not? We haven't seen Diaz in the cage for years. I don't know if he even really wants to fight that badly. I mean, he's a little bit overrated. The Conor fight really elevated his stature. He was always a contender, a gatekeeper, never really a champion. Beat some good fighters, lost to some really good fighters, and fought those 2 fights with Conor, where you could have given him both those fights. So sure, Conor, Diaz 3, why not? I would have to favor Conor in that one, because as inactive as he's still been more active than Nate Diaz. And Nate Diaz is a bit older than Conor as well. So I slightly favor Conor in the third fight. Conor versus Dustin Poirier. Poirier's been killing it lately. Wow, Poirier has improved a lot. I mean, he was always a pretty good fighter, but damn, he's looking like a real contender for that title. And Conor and Poirier have fought before, and Conor beat him. I think Poirier's improved a lot since then. I don't know how much better Conor is now than he was then. And again, Poirier's been more active than Conor. So I think I would still favor Conor, but Poirier's making that more and more of a 50-50 pick'em fight. Point being, I would like to see Conor fight any of the guys I just mentioned. I just think that it was a good thing to hear that Conor is willing to fight, even if it isn't Khabib immediately. So stay tuned.